Okay, we're back with Thomas Taylor's dissertation on the philosophy of Aristotle, and we had just started chapter 4. We're going to go ahead and reread the main text, skipping footnotes until we get to where we actually left off last time. So, chapter 4. The next admirable dogma of Aristotle is this, that beyond the heavens there is not any body, nor any time or place, but that the beings which exist there are impassive and eternal, and possess the most excellent and self-sufficient life. On this subject, therefore, he writes as follows in his first book on the heavens. Aristotle. Let us in the first place explain what we say heaven is, and in how many ways, that the object of investigation may become more manifest to us. In one way, therefore, we call heaven the essence of the ultimate circulation of the universe, or that natural body which exists in the ultimate circulation of the universe, for we are accustomed to call that which is last, and especially on high, heaven, in which we say everything divine is established. In another way, we call heaven the body which is in continuity with the ultimate circulation of the universe, in which the sun and moon and some of the stars are contained. For we say that these are in the heaven. Again, in another way, we call heaven the body which is comprehended by the last circulation, for we are accustomed to call the whole and the universe heaven. We saw the same breakdown in Proclus on the Timaeus. Since therefore heaven is triply denominated, the whole which is comprehended by the last circulation must necessarily be composed from every natural and sensible body, because neither is there any body beyond the heaven, nor can any body be generated beyond it. For if there is a natural body beyond the last circulation, it must necessarily either be one of simple or of composite bodies, and must either subsist according to or contrary to nature. Okay, so here's a significant argument. Nor can any body be generated from it. For, here's the argument, for if there is a natural body beyond the last circulation, it must necessarily either be one of simple or composite bodies, and must either subsist according to or contrary to nature. It will not, therefore, be any one of the simple bodies, because there's no more natural motions left beyond the last circulation. For it has been shown that the body which is moved in a circle cannot change its place, but neither can it be that body which is moved from the middle, nor that which is placed under all the rest, for they would not exist there naturally, since their proper places are different from this. So there are only so many possible simple bodies. The nature of a simple body is determined by its natural motion, and natural motion is always to some goal. And beyond the last circulation, there's no longer any place, so there can no longer be any simple body that moves towards it. But if they are there contrary to nature, the external place will be natural to some other body. Right. And that feels wrong to me. So if a thing exists somewhere contrary to nature, there must be some other thing that's there according to nature. It's like, because contraries imply their opposites. When you have one side of a contrary, the other has to also be. But I feel like the valid conclusion there would be, if one thing exists somewhere contrary to nature, that thing, must exist somewhere else according to nature. But couldn't it be that there was a place in which, according to nature, nothing subsists? Like, I don't know how to explain that difference better, but if a thing exists somewhere not according to nature, that thing must have a natural place. That, I think, follows, because if something is against nature, that implies it has a nature, implies it has a place. But that the place that you're there contrary to nature, therefore that place harbors other things according to nature. I feel like he's trying to use the former kind of logic, which he's demonstrated before, for the latter conclusion. But seems different. Different kind of claim. You would have to like prove generally that all places naturally contain, but actually maybe that's built into the definition of place from the physics. I think place is contingent on a thing being. So if you include that argument from the physics, this point by Aristotle, but if they are there contrary to nature, the external place will be natural to some other body. That does follow from his system. You just have to include that other argument from the physics. Okay. For it is necessary that the place which is contrary to nature to this should be natural to some other body. There is not, however, any other body besides these. It is not possible, therefore, that there can be any simple body beyond the heavens. But if no simple, neither can any mixed body be there. For mixed body existing, it is also necessary that there should be simple bodies. Okay, so no simple body can naturally be out there, so mixed bodies are composed of simple bodies, so the simple bodies would have to be there kind of prior, because parts are prior to the wholes, at least in terms of composition. There are different types of part-whole relation, of course. Proclus will talk about the whole that is prior to parts, the whole that is, in the parts, etc. It is also necessary that there should be simple bodies. And Simplicius, if there is any body beyond the ultimate heaven, it must necessarily either be simple or composite. But simple bodies, as has been demonstrated from simple motions, are the body which is moved in a circle, and the body which is moved from the middle in a right line, viz., which is light and tending upward, and the body which in a right line tends to the middle and is heavy and subsides. It has, however, been shown before that there is one middle and one extremity, but the extremity is the body which is moved in a circle. Hence, beyond the extremity, there will not be any other body which is moved in a circle. Okay. So, beyond the furthest heaven, beyond the extremity, there can't be any body. But I guess they're not really addressing the possibility that beyond the firmament or beyond the circle of the same, the fixed stars, there aren't other circles, perhaps, that are not visible to us. So I think as formulated, the argument works because they're talking about beyond the last extremity, there can't be bodies. But that doesn't prove that the fixed stars that we observe is the last. Hence, beyond the extremity, there will not be any other body which is moved in a circle, but that there is neither any heavy nor light body, nor in short any body that is moved in a right line beyond the heaven, he shows by again employing an appropriate mode of demonstration. For if there is any such body beyond the heaven, it is either contrary to or according to nature, for in both these ways things are naturally adapted to be in place. For it has been shown that those bodies naturally abide in that place in this world to which they naturally tend, since it has been demonstrated that there is one middle and one extremity. If it should be said that a certain body which is moved in a right line is there contrary to nature, those places will evidently be the places of other bodies according to nature. For that which is contrary to nature to one thing is according to nature to another. Okay, so this is the general principle that Simplicius cites. I said you could bring in the definition of place from the physics. Simplicius introduces this general principle, but as an assertion, and I'm not sure where it's proved, for that which is contrary to nature to one thing is according to nature to another. Is that true, though? Because then, like, evil would have to be according to nature to some things. Um, like decomposition, that's not, it is not true. Because monstrosities, like deviations from a species, don't all belong to some other species. So I don't know where he's grabbing that principle. Anyway, I think my argument from the physics was better. There is, however, no other simple body besides these, but if there cannot be any simple body beyond this heaven, neither can there be any mixed body, for mixed are composed from simple bodies, and mixed bodies existing, it is also necessary that there should be simple bodies. That's straightforward enough. Back to Aristotle. Neither is it possible that any body can be generated beyond the world, for it will either be generated according to or contrary to nature. And, okay. So before he said bodies can't be, now they can't be generated. For it will either be generated according to or contrary to nature, and will be either simple or mixed, so the same reasoning will again take place. For it makes no difference whether we consider if it is or if it is possible for it to be generated. Hence, from what has been said, it is evident that neither the bulk of any body is or can be produced beyond the heavens. For the whole world is composed from all its proper matter, since the matter of it is a natural and sensible body. Hence, there neither now are many worlds, nor were, nor can be produced, but this world is one, alone, and perfect. You get the sense here that, like, Aristotle is actually just taking the traditional Platonic line, especially when he says the world is one, alone, and perfect. Okay, so footnote 6. Aristotle appears to assign this as a cause to there being no body beyond the heaven, either simple or composite, viz., that the whole world is composed from the whole of matter. Viz stands for videlicet, which means let it be seen. But anyway, for though these two things follow each other, viz., to be composed from the whole of matter, and for nothing to be left beyond the world, yet at the same time, the being composed from the whole of matter appears to be the cause of nothing remaining beyond the world. For defining the all, or the universe, we say it is that to which nothing is wanting. But Aristotle well observes that it makes no difference whether we consider if it is or if it is possible for it to be generated, for things which may be generated, and especially natural things, when there is no impediment, will be generated, or they would have the power of being generated in vain. So this goes with an issue with Aristotle's philosophy of the possible. I believe somewhere or other you could draw the conclusion from what Aristotle says that for a thing to be possible, it actually has to exist somewhere. So, for Aristotle, all possible worlds exist, but only one world is possible. Or I shouldn't say for something to be possible, it has to exist somewhere. Rather, it will have to, at some time, exist. Or it would have the power of being generated, that possibility, in vain. But things which may be produced according to deliberate choice may frequently not be generated. The intention being altered, or by some means or other impeded. So things which may be generated by nature, if they're possible to be generated, will be generated, or also have the power of generation in vain. But things which may be done, so possible actions that are deliberative, may not come into being because of the difference. Okay, so here's a subtlety. This is interesting. So natural bodies, because they just do what they do, if they are possible to be done, they'll be done, unless there's something in the way of it. And then I would guess that in the whole of time, that thing can't always act against nature, which prevents it from being generated. It would have to alternate between acting against nature and acting according to nature. So whatever is naturally possible will happen. But what is possible according to deliberation may or may not happen, because that's the distinguishing feature of soul, to have multiple things that can be done, or multiple possible types of motion. This world is one alone and perfect. Aristotle. At the same time, likewise, it is evident that beyond the heavens there is neither place, nor vacuum, nor time. For in every place it is possible for body to exist. And they say a vacuum is that in which body is not, but in which it may exist. But time is the number of motion, and motion is not without a natural body. Time is the number of motion, and motion is not without a natural body. It has, however, been shown that beyond the heavens there neither is nor can be any body. It is evident, therefore, that there is neither place, nor a vacuum, nor time beyond the heavens. Cool. By definition, cannot be. 7. Having shown that there is no body beyond the heavens, from this he shows that neither time nor place are there, concluding in the second figure as follows: in every place there may be body. Beyond the heaven it is impossible for body to exist. Beyond the heaven, therefore, there is no place. And again, if a vacuum is that in which a body is not, but in which it may exist, but beyond the heaven there is not only not a body, but neither is it possible for any body to exist, beyond the heaven there is not a vacuum. And again, in the third place, time being the number of motion is always there. Time being the number of motion is always there where motion is. But motion is there where the body is which is moved. If therefore time is where body is, but beyond the heaven there neither is nor can be any body, there neither is nor can be any time beyond the heaven. Simplicius adds that the Stoics, being of opinion that there is a vacuum beyond the heaven, attempt to prove that the extremity of the ineradicate sphere extends his hand upward. Let it be supposed, let's look at that again. Let it be supposed that someone standing on the extremity of the ineradicate sphere extends his hand upward. And if he extends his hand indeed, they assume that there is something beyond the heaven to which he extends his hand. But if he cannot extend it, thus also there will be something beyond which prevents the extension of his hand. Okay, so this is the Stoics' kind of physical explanation for the existence of a vacuum beyond the firmament. And if, again, standing on the extremity of that something which impedes, okay, so if something impedes his hand, then imagine he stands on the other side of that thing. If standing on that, he extends his hand, there will be the same inquiry as before, for it may be shown that there will be something beyond it. To this, however, Simplicius justly replies that if the world is the all, and there is nothing beyond the all, the hypothesis is just as if someone should attempt to extend his hand into non-being. For if he should extend it, there will be some place which receives it, and thus it will no longer be non-being. But if he cannot extend it, there will be some place which impedes. The hypothesis, therefore, and objective inquiry preassumes in the fantasy that there is something beyond the universe, either a solid or a vacuum. But even from the vacuum, says Alexander, which they suppose, they subvert the existence of a vacuum. Okay. Another problem with it is like to have the guy standing on the furthest extremity, he then becomes an extremity, including all of his possible motions, according to the Aristotelian definition of place as well. So, so the place of by putting the guy on the outside of it, you extend by hypothesis the furthest extremity to that guy, and then he could the furthest place would then be the furthest reach to which his hand could go. But let's see Simplicius's rebuttal. So, the hypothesis is begging the question, which he calls out, but even from the vacuum, says Alexander, which they suppose, they subvert the existence of a vacuum. For if there may be a vacuum beyond the world, this vacuum must be either finite or infinite. But if finite, it is bounded by something, and again, the same inquiry may be made about the bound of the vacuum. For someone may either extend nor extend his hand. But if the vacuum is infinite, as it appeared to be to Chrysippus, and a vacuum is space capable of receiving body, was Chrysippus an early Stoic or Peripatetic? Let's see. Do we remember? Stoic, 279 to 206 BC. Makes sense. We're talking about Stoics here, but if the vacuum is infinite, as it appeared to be to Chrysippus, and a vacuum is space capable of receiving body, but does not receive it, and if of relatives, it is necessary that when one of them is, the other also should have an existence. If there is that which is capable of receiving, there will also be that which is capable of being received, or which may exist. Interesting. So let's go back and look at this closer. But if the vacuum is infinite, and a vacuum is space capable of receiving body, but does not receive it, and if of relatives it is necessary that when one of them is, the other also should have an existence. If there is that which is capable of receiving, there will also be that which is capable of being received, or which may exist. Neither, however, do they say that there is a body, nor is there any infinite body that can be received by an infinite vacuum. Okay, so a vacuum's existence is contingent on the existence of body, because correlatives entail one another's existence. And we're defining vacuum here as that which is capable of receiving body. Alexander also justly accuses those who are guided by the imagination of an extended hand, and who fancy, therefore, that what is said of it is true. For we have, says he, an imagination of many things that are impossible. Thus a man may fancy himself out of the city when he is in it, or that his body is of any infinite dimension, whether large or small. But Plato assigns two causes why there is but one world, one of which is the paradigmatic cause. For in the Timaeus he says, in order that the world, according to the monadic, might be similar to all perfect animal, i.e., animal itself, auto zoon, the extremity of the intelligible triad. So we're locating animal itself, so this is pretty relevant. So, of course, we have the intelligible and intellectual, and then the intellectual as the three phases of the second hypostasis. So, the intelligible will be broken into three components, correlate or corresponding to being, life, intellect. So, the animal itself would be the intellectual phase of the intelligible triad, just like the demiurge is the intellectual phase of the intellectual triad. So there we have, from Simplicius, a very clear location of the animal itself, the intellectual phase of the intelligible triad. So there you go. Okay. In order that the world according to the monadic might be similar to all perfect animal, the demiurge neither generated two nor infinite worlds, but this heaven or world is and will be one and only begotten. For if there were another world, it would not be perfect in sensibles, as its paradigm is in intelligibles. Just as a little prior to this, he endeavored to demonstrate that there is always one. One second. Excuse me. For if there were another world, it would not be perfect in sensibles, as its paradigm is in intelligibles. Just as a little prior to this, he endeavored to demonstrate that there is always one image of one paradigm, to which the image is proximately and properly assimilated. Well, I mean, that proves that there should be one most perfect, sensible world, not that there should be only one, because clearly one paradigm actually can have many images, but one will be the most perfect image. But the other cause which Plato assigns of there being but one world is that which Aristotle also assumes, viz., that it is composed from every corporeal nature. Simplicius farther adds, but that in these things also the concord between Aristotle and his preceptor may be apparent, even without any variation in the words themselves. I will add the words of Plato in the Timaeus. Quote, of these four elements, the demiurge assumed one whole from each, in order to the composition of the world. From all fire, therefore, air, water, and earth, it was constituted by its composing artificer, who left no part nor power of anything beyond it. For in the first place, he dinoetically conceived that the whole, because it is especially perfect, should also consist of perfect parts. In the next place, that it should be one in consequence of nothing being left from which anything else of a similar kind could be generated, and farther still, that it should not be subject to old age and disease, because old age and disease requires parts outside to enter in or depart. So if the whole is self-contained, then the mechanism for aging no longer works. A little after, also, he adds, I brought this cause and this reasoning energy. Oh, I see. Not I brought, but that would be misspelled. I just went with it. So through the T is just messed up. Through this cause and this reasoning energy, the demiurge constituted the world one whole from wholes, in all things perfect and free from old age and disease. These things also are asserted by Aristotle when he says that the world, being composed from all sensible matter, is one alone and perfect. Okay, so there are some arguments for there being only one world. He used all the elements because it ought to be made from perfect parts, and if he used part of a part, then it would be imperfect. So he has to use the whole parts in the creation of the world. Of course, could we be talking, just for our own modern day philosophical purposes, could we be talking of one block time multiverse as the sensible world, constituted of all of the elements, and as one the same argument does work if instead of the cosmos you talk about one block time multiverse. So anyway, just to say, Aristotle, hence neither are the beings which are there naturally adapted to be in place, nor does time cause them to become old, nor do the natures which are arranged above the outermost lation experience any mutation, but they are unchanged in quality and impassive. So how does he start getting to So, okay, because there's not mutation, time, vacuum, or place, hence, neither are there beings which are there naturally adapted to be in place, nor does time. Okay, so the beings. Interesting. So, he's not denying that there are beings beyond the outermost heaven, just that there are no bodies. So, the beings that are there, he assumes there are beings there. So we're dealing with non-spatial, non-temporal, uh, nor do the natures which are arranged above the outermost lation experience any mutation, non-changing, so they're eternal, but they are unchanged in quality, and impassive, possessing through eternity the most excellent and self-sufficient life. So what entities exactly is Aristotle talking about here? For like typical interpreters of Aristotle, what would they think he means? Because this is pretty interesting. I hope he specifies these eternal existence. For this, so life, self-sufficient life, it could be a similar Greek term to autozoon, animal itself. So maybe he's talking about animal itself, the paradigms out of which the world is made. For this name is divinely enunciated by the ancients, since the end which comprehends the time of the life of everything, and of which nothing is naturally external, is denominated the eternity of everything. Okay. Through the eternity, possessing through all eternity the most excellent self-sufficient life. This name is divinely enunciated by the ancients, since the end which comprehends the time of the life of everything, and of which nothing is naturally external, is denominated the eternity of everything. So eternity is like beyond which there is no time. For the same reason also, the end of the whole heaven, and the end which comprehends the infinite time, the end of the whole heaven, and the end which comprehends the infinite time and infinity of all things is eternity. So the outermost circle, the circle of the same, moves for infinite time, but beyond that, we don't have motion, we don't have a number of motion, we don't have time, we have what is beyond all number and counting, eternity, deriving its appellation from being always, and is therefore immortal and divine. For the same reason also, reading that same sentence again, the end of the whole heaven, and the end which comprehends the infinite time and infinity of all things is eternity, deriving its appellation from being always, and is therefore immortal and divine. Hence also, the being and life of other things are suspended from this, of some more accurately, and of others more obscurely. Yeah, I mean, this seems pretty clearly that he's talking about the forms or something like them. Maybe animal itself. And he's talking about the beings that are there. I wonder if you could also make an argument that there has to be simply one being. But he doesn't make that argument, so. Hence also the being and life of other things are suspended from this, of some more accurately, and of others more obscurely. For as from the more popular discussions about divine natures, it evidently appears that everything divine, and which is first and highest, is necessarily immutable, and that which thus subsists bears witness to what is said. For neither is anything else which is motive more excellent, since if it were, it would be more divine. Nor has it anything depraved, nor is it indigent of any good of its own. Reasonably also, it is moved with an unceasing motion. For all things cease to be moved when they arrive at their proper place, but of the body which is moved in a circle, the place is the same whence it began, and in which it ends. So we kind of shifted from talking about beyond the last circle. Um, let's see the footnote. It seemed like he was talking about things beyond the last circle of the heaven. Then he kind of shifted to talking about that. So let's look at um, Alexander on this. According to Alexander, what is here asserted is either said about the first mover, which appears to be beyond all body, as not subsisting in any, and which is not in place, as being incorporeal, or it is said about the ineratic sphere. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's a little bit ambiguous. And he rather conceives that all that is said as far as to the words, but of the body which is moved in a circle, the place is the same whence it began and in which it ends, pertains to this sphere. For Aristotle demonstrated in the Physics that it is not in place, since place is the boundary of that which contains, but the ineratic sphere is not contained by any other body. So the ineratic sphere is not in place. So therefore it matches the description of what is beyond as non-spatial, or non-placial, I guess. Those things also which are contained by time are in time as subsisting in a part of it. If therefore there is neither any body beyond it, nor time contains it, it will neither be in place, nor will it become old through time. This also accords with what is said by Plato in the Timaeus. So all this description beyond time could apply to the ineratic sphere or to eternal entities beyond them, which seemed like a more natural reading. But nor will it become old through time. This also accords with what is said by Plato in the Timaeus. But if, says Alexander, by that which is above the outermost circulation, Aristotle alludes to the first cause, he will speak about that which is above the circulation of the ineratic sphere. But if he asserts this of a divine body, he will call the last lation the last of the motions in a right line, for he usually calls the motion in a right line lation, but a circular motion circulation. Yeah, he did say the last, beyond the last lation. Okay, the body, therefore, which is moved in a circle, being above the perpetual lation of the sublunary elements, is neither in place nor in time, being perpetual and free of the incursions of old age. For the whole of the divine body of the outermost sphere is not in place, but its parts, the spheres of the planets, are in place. All right, so Alexander's going with, he's just talking about the ineratic sphere. But when Aristotle says that the natures beyond the heaven possess through all eternity the most excellent and self-sufficient life, he wishes to assume immortality and perpetuity from the whole of the perpetual and from the name of eternity. And first, distinctly evolving the more gross signification of eternity, from this he returns to the proper meaning of it. For we call the eternity of everything the perfection which comprehends the time of everything, beyond which there is nothing according to nature. But Aristotle says Alexander. Oh, I see. But Aristotle, comma, says Alexander, denominates as a more proper eternity the wholeness and perfection of all heaven coextended with infinite time. For this, justly receiving its appellation from being always, is immortal and divine. It is also the cause of immortality and perpetuity to the natures which proximately and properly participate of it, possessing and comprehending in itself the whole of time. But to other things it imparts a partial extension of life, for all things derive from it their being in life, some more accurately and others more obscurely. Aristotle, however, prior to this eternity which is coextended with infinite time, knew that eternity which subsists as the power of the first intellect, according to him, and which Plato says is the paradigm of time. For in the Timaeus he says that the demiurge generated time as an eternal image flowing according to number of eternity abiding in one. But Aristotle says that the being of all things is suspended from the celestial perpetuity, because the motion of it is the cause of existence of everything in generation. He also says it is evident from more popular discussions that the divine nature is perpetual, for in these it is said that everything divine, and which is first and highest, is necessarily immutable. For if immutable, it is also eternal. But Simplicius adds, he calls popular discussions those doctrines which in an orderly series from the beginning are delivered to the multitude, and which he is accustomed to denominate exoteric, just as he calls doctrines which require greater study acroamatic and syntagmatic. But he speaks concerning these in his treatise on philosophy, which is lost. For universally, in those things in which there is something better, there is also that which is most excellent. Since, therefore, in the order of beings, one being is better than another, there is also among them something which is most excellent, and which also will be divine. If, therefore, anything is changed, it is either changed by something else or by itself, and if by itself, and if by something else, either by that which is better or by that which is worse than itself. But if by itself, it is in consequence of aspiring after either that which is superior or that which is subordinate to itself, but the divine nature has neither anything better by which it can be changed, nor that other thing would be more divine than it, nor can that which is essentially more excellent suffer anything from what is essentially subordinate. Therefore, can it be changed? Neither, therefore, can it be changed by itself, as desiring something better than itself, nor as desiring something worse, since neither does man voluntarily make himself worse, nor has the divine nature anything depraved which it may receive from a mutation to that which is worse. Dang, look at this footnote. Alright, I thought we were going to reach the end of this chapter, but alright. Simplicius farther observes that Aristotle derived this demonstration from the second book of the Republic of Plato. For, Plato there says, it is necessary, therefore, if anything departs from the idea of itself, that it should either through itself depart from itself, or through something else. Things, however, which subsist in the most excellent manner will by no means be changed and moved by anything else, as the body is by meat and drink and labor. So the argument for the first mover is there even more explicitly in the laws, but the Republic would have been, I guess, kind of the inception of it. Afterwards, having demonstrated this, he adds, but perhaps it will itself change and alter itself. Whether, therefore, will it change itself to that which is better and more beautiful, or to that which is worse and more deformed than itself? But if it suffers any alteration, it is changed to that which is worse, for we may certainly not say that God is in want of beauty or virtue. Having shown also that no one willingly makes himself worse, he adds, but as it seems, each of the divinities, being as much as possible most beautiful and most excellent, simply remains its own form. Aristotle also says, reasonably it is moved with an unceasing motion, for all things which are naturally moved when they arrive at their proper, from a foreign place, rest, and the beginning of motion to them is in a foreign place, but the end when they become situated in their proper place. But of the body which is moved in a circle, the same place is the beginning and the end of motion, because it is always in the end, it is always in its proper place, and in its proper good, but because it is always in the beginning, it has an unceasing motion, for nothing ceases in the beginning. Simplicius adds, all that I have said from the beginning to the end of the text, Alexander rather conceives should be understood of the body which is moved in a circle. But later interpreters are of opinion that all that has been said should be understood of the immovable causes which move the celestial orbs. And indeed, that it is so. The Platonizing later Neoplatonists will say that Aristotle is talking about paradigms here. And indeed, that it is not possible that the whole of the present text can be referable to a celestial body is evident from what was just said before. For, Aristotle having shown that there is no body beyond the heaven, he concludes, it is evident therefore that neither is there place nor time nor vacuum beyond the heaven. And then he adds, as a certain corollary from what has been said, Hence, neither are the beings which are there naturally adapted to be in place, nor does time cause them to become old, etc. And it is evident indeed that by the beings which are there, he means the beings beyond the heaven. For how can the heaven be said to be beyond the heaven? And how can it be said that no one of the celestial orbs has any mutation whatever when their unceasing local motion is surveyed? In short, how can heaven be said to be the first and highest divine nature, or how is it possible that should not be something better than the heaven which moves it, since an immovable cause is better than perpetual motion? Okay, so Simplicius arguing well that Aristotle is talking about paradigms or something similar here, but then evidently does shift to talking about the inerratic sphere at a certain point. But that all that is here said by Aristotle may be understood of intelligible causes is evident from the words, quote, "For the same reason also the end of the whole heaven," end quote, and still more from what is said in the end, which shows that the heaven is reasonably moved from an unceasing motion. That what is said, however, is obscure is evident, for otherwise there could not be any dissonance among wise men about it. Perhaps, however, what is said pertains to intelligibles as subsisting above, as being exempt from a corporeal nature, and on this account are said to be beyond the heaven. For when he inquired if there is anything beyond the heaven, he did not speak as if by the term beyond he intended to signify place, but delivering the signification of the eternity which is proximate, Taylor footnote on the footnote, eternity, according to the most beautiful and profound definition of Plotinus, is infinite life, at once total and full. And there are many processions of life, therefore, viz., intelligible, intellectual, supermundane, and mundane. So likewise there are many processions or orders of eternity, in all of which its characteristic property is preserved. For as eternity is that which imparts stability of being, some things possess this stability both in their essences and energies, but others in their essence alone. Thus intellect is eternal both in essence and energy, but soul is eternal in essence and temporal in energy. Of course. But delivering the signification, back to the footnote, I guess this is sort of Simplicius, but Taylor is weaving together Simplicius a little bit. But delivering the signification of the eternity which is proximate to us, and which comprehends the time of the life of everything, he proceeds from that to the celestial eternity, which is implied by the words, "for the same reason also the end of the whole heaven." So that's where he shifts topic, where he says, "for the same reason also." So he's applying his argument to the eternal causes, eternal paradigms, down to, for the same reason also, the highest heaven. And on this account he now makes mention of the heaven. Afterwards, he ascends from this to the supermundane eternity, when he says, quote, "the end which comprehends the infinite time and the infinity of all things is eternity." And also when he says that this is the most principal eternity, from which more accurate being and life are derived to celestial but more imbecile to sublunary natures. When he also testifies that everything divine and which is first and highest is necessarily immutable, he appears to speak about the intellectual and immovable principles and which move the celestial spheres. For that he speaks about many is evident from the words "every divine thing which is first and highest." The words also, "for neither is anything else which is motive more excellent or more adapted to an intellectual and immovable principle than to heaven. For the cause which moves the heaven, being immovable, is better than it." And if this is said of intelligibles, it is evident that there is not any mutation of any one of the natures which are arranged above the outermost lation. But the words, "reasonably also it is moved with an unceasing motion," are evidently asserted of the heaven, if this reading be adopted, and they appear to harmonize with the preceding as asserted of the same thing. But if Simplicius adds, the reading is adopted from which is found in some copies, viz., "reasonably also it moves an unceasing motion," and not "it is moved with," which Alexander adopts, it is possible, according to this, to refer all the preceding in the text without any violence to intelligible and immovable causes, and which, as being supermundane, are said to be beyond the world. Okay, so there's a manuscript discrepancy. Some manuscripts don't say moved with, but move others in an unceasing motion. So if you adopt that one change of conjugation, then, or I guess case or whatever, then you can take the kind of Platonic reading of the whole passage. For because they are immutable and immovable, on this account the celestial orbs, which are proximately moved by them, are moved with an unceasing motion. For that which moves, always possessing an invariable sameness of subsistence, that which is proximately moved by it, being conjoined with it, through the highest aptitude, is also necessarily moved. But the motion in a circle is demonstrated to be continual in the 8th book of the Physics. Because, however, the heaven is circularly moved, converting itself to intellect and aspiring after its sameness and participating in its invariable energy, on this account it is moved with an unceasing motion. For bodies which are moved in a right line, having the beginning of their motion different from the end, are moved indeed from the beginning, but cease to be moved at the end, and when they arrive at their proper places. But of the body which is moved in a circle, since the place is the same whence it begins, and in which it ends its motion, because it is always in the end, it is always in its proper end. And because it is always in the beginning, it is always moved to the end. Okay. So yeah, the first reading that occurred to us until that one like kind of ambiguous part towards the end, Simplicius goes with adopting one possible difference in the manuscript itself. And now that's the end of the chapter. Interesting. What passage specifically? And this is like one passage then you could point to if someone says Aristotle did not believe in something like the forms. It's there in the 12th book of the Metaphysics when he talks about paradigms in the mind of thought thinking itself, and it's definitely here in On the Heavens, where he talks about the beings that are beyond the furthest. What specifically does he say?
It's an outermost relation. Beings above the outermost relation.
That could be interpreted either way. Up here, though, he says, it has, however, been shown that beyond the heavens there neither is nor can be body. It is evident, therefore, that there is neither place nor vacuum nor time beyond the heavens. Hence, neither are the beings which are there naturally adapted to be in place. So that's where he starts talking about the beings that are beyond, and he says beyond the heavens. So that's where you could refer to as the proof. I think Simplicius's argument for his interpretation is good using those sentences. So, okay. I think that pretty much speaks for itself. That was a pretty exciting chapter. So we'll go to chapter 5. Next time, what is this going to be about? We've already seen that Aristotle, at the end of his Physics, demonstrates the perpetuity of the world from the infinite nature of time. In the first book of his treatise on the heavens also, he shows multifariously that the heavens, and on account of them the whole world, are ingenerable and incorruptible, and are neither generable. Okay, so the topic will be that the world was neither generated nor will be corrupted. So the eternity of the world. Good stuff. All right. Thanks for participating. We'll be moving on to Proclus in a few minutes. Take care.